Michael, can you mute that?
Hello, 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 everybody. It is time for virtual book club in Beaufort, South Carolina, Virginia, and Beaufort, South Carolina, and all around the country. I just want to welcome everyone to our June virtual book club meeting. Yes, the fans and friends are here. So I just wanted to say to everyone, please make sure to grant to StreamYard permission to use your name. StreamYard and Facebook have certain rules and they got to play in the sandbox right. If you don't do that, please say where you're or who is making the comment or the question. But please let us know where you're watching from tonight. I'm Susie McMahon. Everybody knows Francine Katzen, our group expert, and our featured author tonight is my new friend from the Low Country, Nancy Ritter. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Susie. Hey, Francine.
Hey, Nancy, welcome. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for
I'm
joining us.
grateful.
I'm so excited too. So I'm going to turn it over to Francine to go ahead and read Nancy's bio, and then we'll get started. Go for it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Susie. Sounds great. Nancy has been active in writing and reading communities for many decades. Before retiring to the Low Country of South Carolina, she wrote for magazines and newspapers, earning a strong readership for her award-winning legal journalism. Her skills were further honed at the Justice Department, where she wrote and spoke on a wide range of criminal justice issues. Nancy grew up in Minneapolis and graduated from the University of Minnesota. After bombing out as an English teacher, she moved to Seattle. There she worked as a paralegal and for 17 years lived a Birkenstocky kind of life. I want to hear more about that. Until she switched coasts, living first in New Jersey, then in Washington, D.C. Over the years, Nancy has received numerous awards for her writing. She was a 2019 finalist in the William Faulkner William Wisdom Novel Competition. Her nonfiction work, particularly long-form investigative journalism, has received nationwide recognition on cutting-edge issues such as wrongful conviction and solving sexual assault cases. Nancy first became aware of the concept of ambiguous loss, which she writes about in Slack Tide, through her work on the nation's missing persons crisis. As part of a team of law enforcement experts and kick-ass scientists at the Justice Department, she received a Service to American Medal and recognition at the White House. Yay! Nancy stays connected to reading and writing communities through her involvement with the Pat Conroy Literary Center in Beaufort, South Carolina, where she lives with her fifth rescue dog, Otis. And we welcome Nancy tonight here to talk about her beautiful, fun, wonderful book, Slack Tide. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And let me kick this off with the very first question. And maybe we shouldn't give any spoilers tonight because I'm sure there might be some people that haven't read it. But can you give us an idea or tell us where the idea for this book came from, how it started? How did you get started on this book?
I'd love to tell that story. Thank you for asking. I was doceting at the Pat Conroy Literary Center, which is here in Beaufort, and this couple came in who I just fell in love with immediately. They were wonderful. So anyway, they stayed at the center for a couple of hours, then they left. And I thought for sure I'd never see them again because they had just moved to Chattanooga. So anyway, that night I'm walking Otis, and here come Carolyn and Jeff. I just shouted their names out, walking in the opposite direction. So I invited them in for a glass of wine. We're sitting on my couch, and they're petting Otis. After a bit, Jeff says, "Honey, I think you need to tell Nancy the story." And it turned out that just a few weeks before that, their dog had gone missing, and they had not found Hank. So I could barely sleep that night. I just kept thinking, what would I do if that were to ever happen? How far would I go? What stops would I pull out? And as I kept obsessing about it, I thought, I should just write a freaking book. So that's how I came up with the idea of Slack Tide. or somebody handed the idea to me on a platter.
Well, and you just took it and run with it.
I did.
I love that. That's amazing how stories come out of conversations or things that happen to somebody, or, and then to get upset about, I mean, that's a sad story. So if you lose your pet like that, I mean, I can't even begin to imagine. Do you know if they ever found their dog?
They did not.
Oh,
So to follow up on that, I just want to let you know, Nancy, you're kicking it out of the park with attendance. We've got the state of Washington, Minnesota, Arlington, Virginia, Beaufort, Colorado, Virginia. Way to go. Good on you, as they say in Australia, I learned. So welcome, everybody, tonight. It's so great to see a nice live audience. It is a little different out there. Some people are sending me messages. They don't understand where we are. We're on the YouTube link or on my profile page. Hopefully you'll find us, or I'm sure you will. So I wanted to follow up with that and to dive a little bit deeper in, you were working as a docent and you decided you would write a book. Did you just jump in, or did someone mentor you?
I've been writing all my life. I've actually written a couple of novels before this, which have not been published. So yeah, I mean, I guess I was 73 at the time. So I'm just jumping in everything now. Yeah, you can't dilly-dally at this age. So yeah, I just started writing.
Fantastic. And then part of the sometimes we all talk about the things that really touch us in our heart. And I'm going to put Francine on the spot. And if you could recall an excerpt that you'd like to tell Nancy that really touched your heart in the book.
Oh,
I didn't tell her I was going to do that, so that was kind of mean.
Yeah, that. Well, I think I really hadn't had a chance to think about that. So,
well,
go ahead, Susie.
Do you want to think about what while I read what hit my heart?
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Page 202. Just because, talking about the tides, the title of your book. You say, and then I remembered a third type of tide, one I'd not thought of in a long time, slack tide. Between the ebb and flow, the water ceases to move in either direction, a mere breath of a moment. But in that moment, before the tide reverses direction, the water is completely unstressed. I love that. That hit my heart. Thank you for that, Nancy.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That's lovely. Lovely that you're touched by it.
Yeah, that is. I don't know. I was kind of touched by the entire book in a way of, what would I do? How would I react? I don't think that I would be able to sleep or go on. I mean, if you have a animal that you're missing or a sick child, I mean, those are all huge heartaches, I think.
Right.
I think it was beautifully written. I don't know. I kind of didn't.
That's okay. You did great. I got a chance to read what I wanted to say, and then I put you on the spot. So you did.
But I think
great.
you did. I think you picked out a great one. That could be for both of us.
Oh, yeah. Well, then I just also want to let you know that Donna Armour just joined us. Thomas from Vero Beach says hello, Nancy, and Carolyn said, "Sweet Hank the Handsome." Who is Hank? Is that the name of her dog? Okay.
It is, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's sweet. So I have a follow-up question, Nancy. Are you writing more? Are you going to bless us with another novel, or what are your current projects?
Yeah, I actually started writing another novel within a couple of months of finishing or publishing, I guess, Slack Tide. So I'm working now on two issues that I feel really strongly about in life. The first is female friendship, and the other is assisted suicide. So it's so interesting that your March event, Susie, is going to delve into suicide. So in this book I'm writing, I have two women, girls, meeting in second grade. They become lifelong friends. When they're in their early 20s, they make a pact to assist in each other's death if that should be necessary. So fast forward 50 years, and one of them is dying. In the interim, however, they have a falling out. So the question I'm kind of posing in the novel is, does a promise last forever? Does a promise last even once the relationship has changed? So that's what I'm working on, and I'm close to a good solid first draft. So yeah.
Fantastic. That sounds wonderful. And what she was referring to, just to kind of pull that around and maybe do a quick commercial before the commercial I was going to do, because I forgot to do it at the beginning. But we're going to feature Pat Conroy's novel, Beach Music, in December and January. So December 2024 and January 2025 to give you time to finish. And the three main themes of the book are the Holocaust, turtle conservation, and mental illness and suicide. So they're very heavy topics, but we're going to approach them at a high level and an extremely interesting level. I can't say exactly who's going to do everything yet because I'm in the works of it, but I can promise you that a relative of Pat's will be involved at some manner, if not more than one. So thanks for bringing that to my attention. And Michelle Reed is following from Boston. Francine, do you have another question for Nancy real quick before we bring on a surprise guest?
Yes, I do. Regarding this book, Nancy, did you write it from the beginning to the end, or did you do it in pieces? How do you plot out what you're doing, or?
I don't plot, Francine. This book, I wrote the beginning, and then I had an idea of the end that I wanted to kind of work towards, and then I was stuck with the middle, which was kind of the tough part. So yeah, I kind of jumped around on that, but I always like having, even if you change it a million times over, which I did, but I like having an idea of the end that you want to go to, because that keeps in my mind the feeling that I want a reader to have. If I can write a kick-ass last chapter that feels really good to my heart, I try to bring the reader along in that way.
Okay. And that gives you a really great goal to work towards. If you kind of know the end, you know what you need to do to get there. Did you say this before and I missed it, how long it took you to write this book?
Oh boy. It took about 5 years. I can't say I was writing every day, but I was writing a lot. So yeah, 5 years.
Well, I'm curious about you moving to Beaufort after you lived in DC and Seattle and you were Birkenstocky. Like, when I read that, I'm like, are you still wearing your Birkenstocks?
Probably have them someplace.
Right.
Yeah. I moved to Beaufort for the reason that so many people moved to Beaufort, which is the visual splendor. I mean, the place is just drop dead beautiful.
Yes.
I stayed here for a couple of months at a time when I was still working at the Justice Department. So I had gotten a little bit of a flavor as a traveler, but I just fell in love with the community, and I felt like I could come cold, kind of like what I do with my protagonist in Slack Tide, and that I could form a community of people. And that's what I did. I've got a great community.
Lucky you. That's awesome. Especially moving to, did you know anybody before you moved there?
I knew the woman who rented me the Airbnb.
You knew one person.
Yeah.
One can make two and two can make three and
Right.
so on, right? We're never too old to make new friends.
Right.
I will be very, very interested about your next book, because female friendship is really important to me. That is,
Yes.
yeah, that's one of my one of my things I love to read about. So, do you know when it'll be out?
Oh, I don't. No, I'll probably be working on a couple more years, Francine.
Well,
No breath holding.
okay. Well, I'm sure you'll let us know when it's about to come.
I will. Yeah, it's going faster than Slack Tide, so I'm encouraged by that.
Thank you so much for that. I just wanted to bring on a live question from the comments from author Donna Armour. Hi, Nancy. When and how did you decide to choose sorry, I'm trying to read here. When and how did you decide to choose the culprit?
You mean the fake culprit or the spoiler, I won't say more culprit? I feel like I might do a little spoiling of the mystery if I talk too much.
I'm okay with it. Majority of people that attend this have already read the book, but we'll just say spoiler alert, and they can choose not to listen for a minute. You go ahead, Nancy.
So I knew that I needed to give my protagonist a backstory. She's 60 years old when she arrives in Beaufort, and I couldn't ask the reader to just fill in everything about her history. I needed to make her a complex person. So I started writing, and I really didn't intend to do this. It sort of snuck up on me a little bit. I gave her a love interest, and I started writing about this love interest, and still had not figured out what I was going to do with the dog. I figured the dog would probably have to be alive by the end of the book, but I didn't even know that. So as I'm writing about this love interest, which started to parrot a real love interest, I just thought, what if I can make him the culprit? So it just was, I don't know, it was a little bit of retribution, revenge. I don't know.
That's awesome. I love it.
I have said my friends are going, oh, Nancy, Nancy, Nancy.
I've got Go Nancy from Janet and Butch in Sonoma, California. Go Nancy. Well, with that, Nancy, I'm so excited. I actually have a little bit of chills. I would like for you, if you're ready, to go ahead and introduce our surprise guest. And when you start talking, I will then bring our surprise guest live with us. So go for it.
Yeah, I'll start talking. I'll hold up his book.
There we go. Yes. Hi, Jeffrey.
Hi, everybody.
This is Jeffrey Blount. We only have a few minutes with him, so I can't read his full bio. So I will simply say that Jeffrey spent 34 years at NBC News, where he directed some really major flops, such as The Today Show and Face the Nation. Oh dear. Jeffrey has written 4 novels, the most recent of which is Mr. Jimmy from Around the Way, which is the book we're going to talk about today. And so welcome, Jeffrey. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, everybody. Francine, Susie, everybody watching.
Welcome.
Welcome back, Jeffrey. It's great to see you.
Nice
So
to be
Jeffrey,
here.
Before an actual question, or maybe this is a question, you hinted at something when we were just doing our prep a few minutes ago. Do you have some news to share about this novel?
I do. Coming from the news business, you know you never show up without a headline, right? So Mr. Jimmy has just won the 2024 National Indie Excellence Award for African American Fiction. And Mr. Jimmy has won the 2024 Next Generation Indie Book Awards for African American fiction.
Wow!
So
Congratulations.
that's my news for tonight.
Yeah, I just wish it were bigger, Jeffrey. I don't know.
We'll work on some of those.
Okay. You know, one thing I was going to ask you before you give folks
Becky.
just a little bit of a 30-second elevator pitch about the story itself. Could you tell us about, and I just heard this someplace, so I don't know how to do the setup, Jeffrey, but you had a conversation with your father at the beginning of COVID. Can
Right.
you tell viewers about that?
Yeah, it's a bit of a long story, but he was living by himself at the time. My mother was in a facility, and she had um, dementia, and he couldn't get to her. None of us could, and so we were just calling him all the time, trying to keep him talking, and so he loved to talk to me about when I was young, and he talked about me being in the second grade and that I was a big reader, and this 13-year-old boy who had been placed in that class, who'd grown up on a farm and had never been to school, and that I was made his kind of reading buddy. And so I was, every time there was a break in the curriculum, I was reading with him. At recess, I was reading with him. And so, I liked him a lot, but I was also missing my time, right? So to be out on the playground. But so my dad reminded me when I was 15 that he and my mother came clean and talked about the fact that they knew about this boy before he came in the classroom. They bought the books that he carried that day. They bought the clothes that he was wearing that day because they didn't want him to feel, he already had enough to feel uncomfortable about being a 13-year-old in a class full of 7-year-olds, and that they could all read and he could not. So I realized at 15 that that was a pretty big stretch for my parents because we were small farmers and they already had 3 boys of their own to pay for. And so I thanked them for that. And he said, well, don't thank me too soon because your mom and I are the ones who went to the teacher and suggested you be the reading buddy. So and I asked him why he did that. And he said, because it was your time to know that you were in this world for something more than yourself, that each of us has a duty to recognize each other's humanity. And when you see other human beings in need, it's your duty to step up and do the right thing. So that conversation was a huge, huge piece of Mr. Jimmy from Around the Way coming to light. And it goes right to Nancy sent me an email back when I was down in Beaufort and we'd seen each other and everything. And she tagged the email, revolutionary yours in kindness. And I asked her if I could use that from now on, because that is what Mr. Jimmy was all about. It's an African-American billionaire falls from grace, runs to the South, to the really rural South to try and hide from social media and all that, finds himself next to this community mired in abject poverty. And so this incredibly wealthy man is living next to this poverty. He gets drawn into it. And the book follows his attempt to find redemption for his own failures and his attempt to keep this community from collapsing on itself. And in the meantime, I do some of what you do, Nancy, and Slack Tide, is that, it's community building, it's relationship building. And you create these characters, the couple, Lafitte, I think, if I'm saying the name right.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, I'm not even going to try to pronounce the professor's name, but his last name, and then Darius, you create relationships that are more than just part of the story. They teach us about how we relate to each other as human beings. And they teach us about how we should. That there's a scene, folks, when you read Slack Tide, where, and those of you who read it know already, when she meets this young African-American boy, Darius. And that could have gone wrong all kinds of ways. But there's a heart in this character that turned the tables on the readers, because I don't think I expected it to go that way. And I don't know if Nancy expected it to go that way when she was writing it, but it did. It was beautiful. And throughout that book, part of what I love most about the book, of course, we have the dog getting taken and her struggle and her learning that even in beautiful small town America, there's politics and red tape and all of that until we get to the end. But the thing that takes us there are these beautiful, beautiful relationships. And I think that's what makes Slack Tide for me worth reading. And that's what I tried to do with Mr. Jimmy from Around the Way, is to create relationships that people can relate to, feel for, and then want and find themselves participating in. Someone wrote, if I can, it's like just I just love this. You write a book hoping that people will understand why you write it. And then you get I have never had a fictional book strike such a call to action in my soul before. So that's what writing's all about. And
Let me
and I
be
think
clear,
we both
Jeffrey,
hit that note.
that's your book, not mine. The call to
Yes,
action.
but
Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
But you have a call to action too, and that call to action is how we treat each other.
yes, that's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely moving and absolutely powerful. I just want to go back to June of 2020 when I met you, Jeffrey, and Rebecca Dwight Bruff, our original
Yes.
first featured author, had asked me, well, what are you going to do next? I'm like, I don't know. She goes, let me refer you to an author. Here we are 4 years in. Jeffrey, you were the second featured author, and there was a lot of serious conversation and moving conversation when we first met, because it was the Floyd trials, right? Or that had just happened.
That's right. Yeah.
And here we are again, and I'm getting those same heartfelt feelings. And Francine, did you want to ask either one of them a question real quick before they continue to converse between the two of them?
I've heard that you talk about your dad's conversation with you, Jeffrey, before. My dad felt the same way about that's how he taught us. And when I hear that you talk about that tonight, it brings it back a lot of memories. And, we've all connected here through books, but we've also connected through probably how we were brought up to treat each other with respect and dignity. And if we can carry this on to our children and our grandchildren, won't that be wonderful? I mean,
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. But anyway, we talked to Nancy. Jeffrey, do you have another book coming out soon? What are you working on?
I'm working on another book. It's historical fiction, and it'll be a bit. It won't be a few years, but I'm enjoying working on it, and it's a great story, and it's about overcoming the most amazing odds when someone who was born a slave becomes the first captain of a U.S. military vessel. And in the middle of that is a swashbuckling, dangerous, love-filled, tragic, exciting life that I am really enjoying writing. So that'll be the next one.
Well, that'll give me plenty of time to get your other books read.
Yes. And there's also, if she doesn't mind me saying it, Rebecca Bruff and I are working on a project together too. So.
Oh, well, that sounds exciting.
Yeah.
I love leaks. So Jeffrey, what do you want to ask Nancy tonight?
Well, I got carried away there. So the thing I was going to ask her was to tell us about building those characters and what, because I really think there's a plot and there's a line of the story, but that is, to me, is the heart of the book. Why do I keep coming back to a book? Because I'm drawn into it. What draws me into it? These people and these stories. So I guess I would ask, in particular with Darius and the professor, those two really stuck with me. Why did you put them in the book? What were you trying to tell the reader that your protagonist needed from these two characters?
Both the professor and Darius give the protagonist, Cecilia, a sense of acceptance. And what I was trying to do when I have the dog disappearing literally on her first day in her new town, and I don't even know where that is in the book, probably page 8, very, very soon, she feels incredible guilt. I mean, she screwed up. She perceives that she left the dog at an unsafe place. And so I wanted my protagonist to be really wounded, to just be devastated. And so I wanted to bring into her life characters who would give her confidence that she could survive this. And the professor actually is loosely based on a friend of mine here in town, who, when I first moved here, gave me a lot of confidence. And Darius, I've done a lot of mentoring and tutoring of kids, and
That's wonderful.
I think I have Darius as a 9-year-old. I mean, I can think of 50 9-year-olds who have touched my heart in my life, and yeah, so I wanted a kid. I was a little concerned about writing an African American character.
Yes.
I felt very sobered in doing that, but I couldn't have my protagonist, who is a white female, come to a town like Beaufort, which is so celebrated, even though we have a lot of work to do, but
Right.
with racial justice and integration and acceptance, unlike I have experienced anywhere else in my life. So I had to have an African American character who played a major role.
I think that context is wonderfully said. I also think writers should be able to write whatever on their heart and trying to do their best. And I was, as you can tell, I was very much in love with Darius. So I think you did a great job on that. And I appreciate you acknowledging the context that you're in, because I watched Andy Griffith when I was growing up, and I was like, every Sunday, where are all the Black people in North Carolina? I guess they don't exist. So thank you very much for finding Darius and making him a part of the real Beaufort and a part of your life. And again, showing us, whether you intended to or not, about how we can overcome issues of one side of town, the other side of town. We can overcome issues of older and younger, which I also think is just a beautiful part of that. Here's an older white woman and a younger Black boy, and they're able to find common ground in their hearts for each other. So I just think that's wonderful. So to everybody who hasn't read this book yet, please pick it up and please pay particular attention to the stories and the feels that come along with the people as the story moves along. And you'll find yourself really caring for these people, really getting upset on their behalf, particularly for Cecilia, and really, hoping that they come to her aid, which they will do in a very nice way.
Thank you so much for that. And somehow we lost Nancy. So I'm gonna keep on talking, and
Okay.
I will let her back in. These kinds of things always seem to happen.
Yeah.
There's always these little gremlins. But this is such a treat. Here she comes. Stand by just a second, and we'll get everything added in.
Okay.
While we're waiting. See, it just happens with the former, Jeffrey Blunt. I have all these technical issues. It's hilarious.
Welcome back.
Hello.
So he was very eloquent in wrapping all that up. And so that was his question to you. Do you have another question for him? And then I have my wrap up questions that I always do. And I've asked the audience if they want to ask a question. I saw the one comment that I wanted to make sure I read out loud. Mary Eggert, having known Nancy for over 60 years, relationships have always been a primary in her life. She knows how to do relationships. So I thought that was beautiful.
That's very sweet. Thank you, BF.
Yeah, BFF. So Nancy, what else do you have for inquiring minds to ask Mr. Jeffrey?
One thing that I found a struggle when I first started to write Slack Tide was figuring out what my intention for writing this book would be. And I didn't know that was going to be such a big deal. I thought you could just dive in and write a book. But it takes a lot of time, and it pulls the heart and gut right out of you. So you better know why you're doing it. I mean, it's because you're going to be doing it for a long time. So coming up with the intention, I just really, that snuck up on me. And I heard you say, Jeffrey, I don't know if it was to me, but you said that your intention for Mr. Jimmy was motivational rather than commercial.
That's right.
And you have talked about that a little bit already of why that aspect is important to you. But
Right.
for any possible writers out there who think they want to make commercial success their primary reason, let's take them to school. But talk about the
Well,
motivational versus commercial, Jeffrey.
well, for many
Absolutely.
years when I was in the news business, you know, I had to be objective and I would never be able to call myself an activist. But I carried around all these stories of things that I'd seen and conversations that I had and issues that I wanted to talk about. And now that I'm writing, I like to think of myself as a literary activist in the same vein of, you know, Toni Morrison or Baldwin or, you know, The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. And when you think about that book, The Jungle by Upton Sinclair, we have the FDA today because that book was written. He got people so upset about the way that the meatpacking companies were being run and everything. They actually created legislation. So he wrote a book that changed the way the country legislated itself. So, you know, Margaret Atwood says a word after word after word is power. And I'm trying to do that for the things that I feel strongly about at this point in my life. And I want to use my words to become an activist for those things. And that in this particular community, where Mr. Jimmy is working to show us what kind of poverty actually exists in our country that we don't believe or know about exists, where people have almost no government services. People are existing without running water. People are existing with houses with holes in the walls, and they're cooking with butane and causing all kinds of problems in their homes. And there's a horrible lack of education and support for children in those situations. So this book highlights that, but it also highlights love, like you did, Nancy, in your book. And Mr. Jimmy gets to show that even in the midst of all of this, there can be great love. There can be great hope. All the kids need and all that some of the other people needed in that neighborhood was a light. And one of the kids, there's a line in the book where the kids are looking at him and he feels what they're saying when they're looking at him. And that is, you are my roadmap. I just needed to see someone who had been there and made a success. And maybe now I believe I can do it. So that was the meaning and the message. And that was the mission behind Mr. Jimmy from Around the Way.
Correct.
Fantastic. Thank you both. Jeffrey, can you hold up a copy of your book of Mr. Jimmy
Yes, I
Around the
can.
Way so everyone can see it? Okay, so there it is, everybody. Jeffrey is going to be featured, and if I do this wrong, I'll correct it online. July, and we're going to meet again later in July, beginning of August. I believe that's accurate. If not, Jeffrey, I'll get it corrected.
Okay.
Yep. And I can't wait for everyone to go out and get a copy of that book. What is the best place for people to order that book, Jeffrey?
Well, I like to say one of the beautiful things about Mr. Jimmy is that it is in libraries everywhere. It's also in independent bookstores, and I love walking into a town somewhere and just going in the bookstore and seeing Mr. Jimmy there. So if they don't have it, they can order it. We always say we support the independent booksellers first, and then of course you can buy it online at Amazon and Barnes and Noble and so forth.
Thank you. And then Thomas, Tom and Fucht, I don't want to mispronounce his name, has my closing question for the two of you. Speaking of relationships, what are your thoughts about your part in a good relationship of the author and a reader? Talk about the importance of that relationship.
Wow.
And I'll have Nancy go first.
Nancy.
Okay. That question came from Dr. Thomas Foyt, who was very high up in the National Institute of Justice, which was the agency in the Justice Department that I worked at. He was a good friend of mine. And I think Tom actually even taught me a lot about reader and writer, because I was writing at the Justice Department, and I was writing about really, really tough issues. I was writing about missing children, wrongful conviction, solving sexual assaults, just these really, really tough issues. And I think one of the ways that I was quite successful at the Justice Department, besides having terrific bosses, was really forming a relationship with the people who were going to read my stuff and figuring that out. If I was going to take on wrongful conviction, for example, I wanted to know what prosecutors and defense lawyers and policymakers, what formerly incarcerated innocent men and women would have to say about it. So I always approached it from my reader's perspective first, and then tried to develop the story from that. I have to say with Slack Tide, the thing that has touched me so greatly is going to book clubs and having readers, complete strangers who I obviously have never known before, tell me something about Slack Tide that I never envisioned. That they would say, oh my gosh, when you had JP doing this, and I just sit there and I am humbled and just delighted that they're bringing their equation and their personality into the story. And that's the feedback loop. I mean, that's terrific for me. And say it better if you can, Jeffrey Blount.
I don't think I can.
Challenge. Challenge accepted, I hope.
Yeah, that was beautifully said. One of the things I love about the relationship with writer and reader is finding that sweet spot where you are able to touch your reader and your reader is able to touch you in their response, as you were saying, Nancy. The book that Susie mentioned that I was on first with, The Emancipation of Evan Walls, about a young African-American boy who was intellectually inclined and had to suffer because of that. To write a book like that, and then to receive an email from a child who is going through the same thing to say, I am Evan Walls. To then have that same child graduate from college and send me the essay that he wrote to go to college, and say, in that essay says, this book saved me. You write because I try to write what's on my heart, what I think is important. And the books kind of draw people who are in tune with that. And then when you get to go to the book clubs, like Nancy said, or when you go out on tour and people self-select, they read about you or they read your book and they come to talk to you and to see you, they bring their perspective. They bring what the book, from somebody just coming up and saying, I hate that character, Rebecca. I just hate her. And I say, great, because that's what I wanted you to, right. And that kind of thing. And it starts a wonderful conversation, which then leads to why that happened. And when you read, I know as a reader, I bring my own stuff to the book. And I sit down and I read it. And when I read, I don't know, like the first line in your book, Nancy, that refers to the eyes of your dog and heaven and that kind of stuff. But those things that make you stop and reflect about your life. And then you want to have that conversation with the author about how they got there. And you both grow in that instance. So I think it is, the author doesn't, obviously we don't exist without the reader, and vice versa. But there's just so much personal growth for me as a writer every time I write a book and go out and get information from people that I then take to the next book. And makes me better at reaching out to that audience through those words. And then I love being in the spaces with them so I can share that. So we get all excited and then we get humbled and we get upset about the same parts in the book. People have come to me and say, well, I was reading this and it was really hard for me to take. And, I had all these feelings. And I said, guess what? I did too. And as Robert Frost says, if there's no tears in the writer, there are no tears in the reader. So that kind of sums it up for me. So we're writing something that we feel strongly about, that we feel needs to be in the world for people to read. And then these wonderful people are drawn to it. And the beautiful thing about today and online world and book clubs and book tours is that you get to have that relationship about that book that you wrote and how it touched all of you.
It's beautiful. Thank you, Nancy, for allowing us to feature you last month / this month. It's a joy to meet you and to now know you, and I hope to continue our friendship.
Thank you, Susie.
Thank you, Jeffrey, for coming back to the virtual book club like a powerhouse that you are. And I hope you read all the comments, both of you, that you're receiving on the stream, especially about accolades and relationships and stories. So there's a lot of opportunity for some continued conversation between author and readers. Jeffrey, thanks for coming back and can't wait to meet with you again. And Francine, I just want to tell you that I had the tears at the beginning of the talk when I was talking about the calm tides, and I saw you tearing up a little while ago. So it's a great book club when everyone.
Yeah, and I was tearing up when Jeffrey was, talking about the whole kindness thing that he found in Slack Tide. So we're a bunch of blubber babies. That's just always.
Y'all just better be glad I'm not sobbing, because I've been doing a lot of that lately too.
I like that.
All righty. Well, everyone, I got the comment right here, and I'll let it be the last word and say goodnight to Nancy and Jeffrey, and Francine and I will stay on for book club business. I love how both these authors put their words together and work together tonight. Me too.
Me too.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I'm not crying.
Jeffrey.
You're crying.
Jeffrey, I'm going to see you in Richmond. Don't forget, I'm going to email you.
Okay,
right.
Absolutely. Bye.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.
Wow.
Okay, as Melissa just said, I'm not crying, you're crying. Okay, that was a virtual book club.
I think well said, Melissa. Yeah. Way to come back, Susie.
Wow.
I know. Okay. Like, were you even gone?
Let's get this party started. Let's get going. All right. So what's next? So right now, Francine, if you could hold up the book that we're featuring this month into next month and pull it really close, well, maybe a little bit over. So Cassandra King is coming back as a featured author of one of her original books, Same Sweet Girls. Cassandra King, our beloved neighbor and, of course, widow of Pat Conroy. So that is what we're going to be reading right now. Looks like Karen Dreher's already said read it. She's been there, done that. So she needs to know what's next.
Me too. Yeah, me too. This was so good. You know, I got this when I came to the getaway 2 years ago, and I had it in my stack because, you know, it was autographed. So you can't get rid of the autographed book.
Right. You can't get rid of any book. I don't think.
Well, no. So now are you going to feature her for later in June or July?
We're working on that.
You are? Okay.
Yeah.
And so how about, will she be before Jeffrey though?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So that's the next book you'll read. And then Jeffrey, the book we just discussed, will be Mr. Jimmy Along the Way will be the next month, followed by another return author. We got a lot of low country going on, a lot of southern, and it's like we got to bring a little bit of Colorado back in. So this is actually a collection of stories put together by our previously featured author, Christine Reed. Ooh. And she was the hiker that went up into the state, that went hiking in Washington. It's kind of a flare on another real popular story, but this one is actual collection of 26 women about hiking, backpacking, trail running, and mountaineering. So I can't wait to have Christine back. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, that'll be a great conversation. She'll have lots to talk about with that.
Yes. And then, without knowing exactly whether it's September or October, I am so honored to announce that Melissa helped me coordinate this, that Joseph McGill is going to be joining us. And he is the gentleman who does overnight stays in formerly enslaved buildings across the Low Country and the whole coast. So we will be reading Sleeping with the Ancestors. And we're going to have two gentlemen join us that but it's going to be Joseph McGill and Herb Frazier, how I followed the footprints of slavery. So I'm excited about that.
That's a big deal.
And then we have a gap, but someone in line, maybe about turtle conservation. And then we will be reading.
We have one for October. She said she would.
She did? Well, why don't you announce that, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Our October book will be At Loggerheads by Kristen Neese. And I had the pleasure of hosting her in my home last year for a book party and just fell in love with her. And so did all my friends. And the book is fabulous. It's a debut and it is so good. So she's October.
Awesome. So we'll make that work. And if the other people need to do October too, I'll just make it work. And Karen wanted me to post the list. We're working on a new graphic for all the future feature reads for the year. And I'm going to finally close out because this is one of the longest virtual book clubs we've had in a while. Please, if you're interested in attending the 2025 Low Country Literary and Leisure Getaway, I hope that the momentum that we have tonight is going to roll into that, because we're going to bring some really special, unique programming around the themes, as I stated earlier, of beach music, which is turtle conservation, the Holocaust, and mental illness and suicide. And we'll have featured authors from around this area and hopefully from out of town as well. And each one will have their own opportunity to be with the community of getaway attendees that come to Pat Conroy's Beaufort, and then we'll go out to Fripp Island for another special, exciting activities that are still all in the works. So I'll leave it at that. Let me know if you're interested.
Thank you, Susie, for having me tonight to help. It's such an honor to do this. Such an honor. Thank you.
So much fun. Hey, everybody, you got plenty of reading, and I can't wait to see you again soon. Thanks, Francine. Night, everybody.
Susie. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.